Hello and welcome to the Chrissie Mayr podcast. We are on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. And if you're listening to us right now on iTunes, please go and leave a 5-star review. I appreciate so much everybody who has left a review this far. Also very excited to talk about Silk City Hot Sauce. Go to silkcityhotsauce.com. Use the promo code CMP. You're going to get 15% off your entire order. Plus, they're going to throw in for free a bottle of cherry sriracha and some cool stickers. So go to silkcityhotsauce.com right now. Use the promo code CMP. Get some spice in your life. Get some pep in your step. Get some flavor into your glaber. That wasn't really funny. I'm trying though. And there might be an exciting new flavor coming out from Silk City Hot Sauce, maybe featuring yours truly. So stay tuned for that. This episode is also sponsored by Blue Chew. Let's talk about something we all need more of, guys and gals. Not just sex, but great sex. Fellas, now you can increase your confidence and performance in bed. Listen up, BlueChew.com. That's blue like the color blue. Blue Chew brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. Take them any time of day or night, whenever, even on a full stomach, so you can be ready for when an opportunity arises. Ladies, you can get in on this too and get some for your man. The holidays are coming. Stock their stuffings so they can stuff your stockings. Blue Chew is made in the USA. It's prescribed online by licensed physicians, so you don't have to go to the doctor and wait in line. It's even cheaper than a pharmacy. They prepare it and ship it right to you in a discreet package. No awkwardness. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to wait in line. If you could benefit from more confidence where it counts, Blue Chew is the fast and easy way to enhance your performance. And right now, we have a special deal for you. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use the promo code CMP. Just pay $5 in shipping. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com. and use the code CMP. Try it for free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper choice. I thank them for sponsoring the podcast. Remember, this podcast is free. So if you want to support me, support them. Just use promo code CMP. So excited to have this gal on the podcast today. She is a Republican pundit, an ex-convict, the host of Red American Radio on iHeartRadio. She's a former Miss Florida. She's got everything. It's Karyn Turk. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And you're coming to us from an Airbnb right now, which is pretty good. I suspected maybe the DMV by your background, but
it's not too bad. I mean, I'm living in 2 rooms now temporarily, but I'll be okay. It could be worse.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, this is what happens when we move. It's just things get crazy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you just a couple days ago. I think this was on the 17th. You spoke at the March on Washington. How was that?
I did. It was amazing. It was so amazing. And we just had thousands of people out there in support of freedom. You know, it's not a partisan organization. It's an organization that believes in the Constitution, believes in Americans' rights to free speech and all of our constitutional rights. And it was great to be able to get together with all of these people. And it was such a diverse group. It was really cool. Young Pharaoh was there, and
Ooh.
Joy Villa, and Bryson Gray, and
Bryson.
me. And yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I love Bryson too. He's a cool person and like somebody that I want to hang out with. So the fact that he was there it made everything even better. And Joy, I feel the same way about. We just had the greatest time. And Dr. Cordy Williams, who's the Megaphone Marine, was there. He's actually the founder of the 1776 Forever Free organization, along with his business partner, Chris Lippy. And it was inspiring. I mean, everything about it, I can't stop talking about it. I can't believe it's over because I looked forward to it for so long. And then we got there and I feel like it was a hot minute and then I was back.
Oh, yeah. It's so surreal. These are like surreal, weird times we're living in. And I recently did your Red American Radio show, and I really loved that you were able to blend like, you know, serious topics while still keeping it really light and fun. Was that, you know, always the goal of the show, or it just kind of came out from your passion for politics?
I think it's just, you know, it's my personality, and Chris is the same way. We're people that always try to find the silver lining. I mean, hey, you know, once you get thrown into jail, you kind of have to find the silver lining. So I really find myself these days trying to find the optimism in every little thing. And, you know, we do the show and we're controversial and we're out there. We're both very conservative. We're both Republicans. But at the same time, we also try to approach things with some humor and some levity, because right now everything is so tense and crazy. I think it's really important for us to really focus on things that unite us, not what divide us. And we loved having you on because it brought a little comedy to the show. And I think we all need that right before the election.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, I should have asked before. I'm like, can we make jokes about Hunter Biden's laptop? Are we talking about this stuff? And yeah, you guys were great. It was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And, I'm doing a lot of segments. I do Behind the Headlines, which is my YouTube show. And I do segments on there where I cover pretty hard hitting topics. Anything that's in the headlines, I want to bring the truth out, because as we know, a lot of times the headlines are clickbait news. Take it from me. And, you want to know what the real substance of the story is. And that's why Behind the Headlines has become a real passion for me. And now I'm doing these things called truth bombs, where I'm bringing in little segments into the segment, like Hunter Biden is a crackhead. Fact.
Yeah. Fact. Yeah. Like it's weird. I'm looking at my, even my Twitter trends. Like I laugh when I look at my Twitter trends, because I'm like, oh, if you weren't aware of news suppression by now, it's like, I mean, anybody who can't acknowledge that that's going on at this point is living under a rock. But I'm just like, oh yeah, nobody's talking about the Biden laptop. Very few people are really talking about like the Tucker's, the interview from yesterday, what's his name? Bo Belinsky was like the partner of Hunter's, and it's crazy. And then Twitter shows me this thing. Oh, election results might be delayed. It's like they're fucking all in on it, man.
That's exactly where they're going to go with it. I've been saying that for a while. I'm like, this is going to be like 3 or 4 months of like recounts, and they're not right, and this and that, because they thought the mail-in ballot fraud scheme was going to work, and they were going to steal the election that way. And now that it's become obvious that that's not going to happen, now it's going to be all about this recounting. And this is going to go on for 3 or 4 months. And what sucks about it is it's just unproductive for all of us as Americans. Like, let the president do his job. Let's get stuff done. And all of these things, whether it's impeachment or Russia, or the Ukraine, or, this, I mean, it's insanity. And now they're going to try to just, create this whole environment of like election recount. And that's going to be 3 or 4 months of it. It's going to be crazy.
So are you saying we won't know the results of this election for 3 or 4 months?
I hate to say it, but I think that could happen. I think there's a very good possibility, as crazy as it sounds. I mean, I think that Donald Trump is going to win by a landslide, but, I'm on that side of the aisle, and obviously I feel that way. But I really think that it's going to be interesting, because I think it's going to be no matter what happens. And I think there's a pretty good chance it's going to be a landslide victory. All of a sudden, the Democrats are going to come out and say, this can't be, and they didn't count the ballots correctly, and mail-in voting, and people changing their votes. Did you see about this?
Oh, that it was like one of the most Googled phrases. How can I change my vote? I guess it was after the final debate. People were like,
yeah. So
I said, what about fracking? Yeah.
That's going to come into play too, because think about all these people that are going to change their votes. I bet you that there's going to be some, outcry to overturn that and go back to the original votes. And it's just going to be, how much language can I use on the show?
Oh, all the language.
It's going to be a clusterfuck. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a clusterfuck.
That's crazy. And you think, oh, we're in 2020. Like, we should be the best at counting votes we've ever been in the hundreds of years of history of voting for presidents. It's like, I don't know if you could get in a time machine and see how long it took people to figure out that like Abe Lincoln won. I don't know. It just, obviously there wasn't as much like bullshit and internet and social media. And that's what I was wondering, like, can people actually change their vote once it's sent in? I can't imagine that you'd be able to. If you are, that's a clear vulnerability for fraud.
It's vulnerability for fraud. All right. And there's actually I think there's 4 states that they've announced that if you do early voting, that you can go in on election day and change your vote. So that's going to add to the whole clusterfuck environment. We already know that voter fraud is real. I did a whole expose on that on Behind the Headlines, and there's over almost 1,100 cases of voter fraud that are proven. So people that say that voter fraud isn't real, they're the ones delivering the fake news, because it's absolutely real.
Yeah. And I know that you and also, Project Veritas has done a lot of work with exposing voter fraud. And I just really feel, I'm like, man, like my mom died 2 years ago. I'm like, what if someone tries to vote with her name? Like, what the hell is stopping anybody? I don't know. It's crazy that there's so many like chances for this to be messed up. There's so many like vulnerabilities. And perhaps that's by design, I guess, or maybe it's always been this way and we're just now waking up and seeing what's really going on.
I don't know. I don't think it's always been this way. I think this is really probably the most contentious election cycle that we've ever had. At least, definitely in my lifetime, but I think maybe ever. This has really gotten extremely crazy. And, people want to say, oh, there's always been rioting, and there's always been this, and, civil rights. But it wasn't this bad. This is the media using this as a narrative to mislead the American people. And, our March on Washington was actually evidence of that, because after I got back, one of the first things I was kind of like replaying the whole thing in my head. And I was like, what an amazing group of people we had. It was just so diverse. And we had more Black people on this march with us than white people. I mean, there were just a lot of people that came with us, and people that were actually joining the march as we marched through the streets of DC. And, we had young pharaohs. So we had a lot of young African-American people, marching with us, and just Latinos. I mean, everybody. It was amazing to watch. And I got back, and all of a sudden trending on Twitter is that the people in our march were paid to be there.
Oh God, really?
So why don't they just discredit these people? Like, I felt bad for all the people that came out, because now they're just taking away their credibility. I mean, it's this whole cancel culture environment. And, certainly, again, I've been a product of that. So not that it surprised me, but it disappointed me.
That's very disappointing. I think it's probably very hard right now to be a Black or Hispanic, someone who's always been a conservative, but especially if you're sort of breaking out of your like super far left shell and going, whoa, like this party is not for me. And how sad to be, called a paid actor. You're just
a paid actor. I felt so bad. And, a lot of the people, when I talk to them and, we end up talking politics, I find out, that they voted for Obama, and they were disappointed by the fact that they thought that there was going to be some major changes during his 8 years. And I felt the same way. I didn't vote for him, but when Obama was elected, I was like, great. You know what? That's what the majority wants. Maybe he can unify the country. Maybe this is going to be some pivotal point for all of us, and it's going to unite all of us and bring us together. What a complete failure that was.
Yeah, I voted for him the first time. I'm like, oh, he's a good looking guy. And I was like, either in college or right out of college. When was that? Like 2008. Yeah, I was like kind of freshly out. And I was like, sure. And because that was my whole, like, went to a liberal arts college, was very much all about like social justice, had no clue of like the real world yet. So of course I was like, super far left. And and then did not vote for him the second time because I didn't want to miss yoga class. I was like, he's going to win New York, whatever. I really need to go to Bikram yoga. So I didn't.
Bikram yoga is good. I mean, that's very important. So I can see why. I mean, over voting for Obama or going to Bikram yoga, I would definitely pick Bikram yoga any day of the week.
I'm like, and who knew that they would both turn out to be like very controversial figures?
Yeah. Yeah.
Things were nice back then. Yes, because you mentioned, and for the people that are just now hearing about you, you mentioned, that I mentioned at the top, you went to prison. You mentioned just now, you've been a victim of cancel culture. Perhaps we should have dove into this like in the beginning, but so you were involved in kind of a shitty scenario there. You were an only child. You're taking care of your mom, which is so hard because my mom was an only child and I watched her take care of my grandma. Just everything is on you. It's stressful enough to begin with, but like you literally have to be so on point when you're, caring for an ill parent, and you have to make sure it's like another job, keeping track of their care and their medicine and the plan. It's a lot. And so you were doing that with your mom. And then I don't know how this happened. There was she was in a nursing home and there was some maybe abuse in the nursing home. And then and you were like, okay, then something came up called a guardianship. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, I'd love to, because I was super naive going into the situation. And I watched my mom take care of my grandmother as well. I mean, unfortunately, Alzheimer's ran on that side of the family, and my grandmother had it, and my mother took care of her. And I watched how horrific it was as she declined. And my mom kind of prophetically always knew that that would happen to her, but you don't realize how bad it's going to be until you're the one in that situation. And things were pretty good when my father was alive. They were able to live independently, and I took care of them, and I had aides in and out. My kids jumped in, and we got by. You do the best you can, and it wasn't perfect, but it was as perfect as it was going to get. And after my father passed away, my mother started to decline pretty swiftly. I had aides in and out. I was trying to provide her with like 24-hour care. I was running over there. I have 4 kids of my own. I have stepkids. I have a grandbaby. I have a full plate, but
you're a grandma?
Yeah, I'm a grandma. That's
you're a
whole
GILF.
other.
You're
yes,
a full-on GILF.
I'm a GILF. That's exactly what my husband said when he met me, and we're still together. So I guess it worked. That was kind of his pickup line. But yeah, it was rough, and I was doing the best I can. And eventually it got to the point where she ended up in the hospital. And after she was in the hospital, she had to go to a more advanced facility. And at that point, we had hoped that, she was going to get better and that she was going to be able to go back to independent living or assisted living. And, for a while, it seemed like we might be on an upswing, and I had aides in and out, and the facility was homey. And there were things I liked about it at that time. But as things progressed, I realized that my mother wasn't getting the care that she needed. And they were, in my opinion, over medicating her, neglecting her. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things that were wrong. And you can tell by having me on the show, I'm not someone who keeps my mouth shut. So I became very vocal about the nursing home providing, substandard care. I started calling all the state agencies. I made a lot of noise. I called the ombudsman. I thought, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be an advocate for my mother. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to make noise, and I'm going to make change. But what I didn't realize is that our system in Florida, and really now I know all over the country, is so beyond corrupted that these state agencies, all they did was tip off the nursing home that, like, hey, you have this kid who's making a lot of noise and you better deal with her. Wow. So the nursing home dealt with me. And the way that they dealt with me was by trying to create a barrier for me taking action against neglecting my mother. But again, in my naive state, when they actually proposed appointing a guardian for my mother, right now I would have said, hell no, no way. But at that time I thought, great, a guardian to me meant someone who is going to be an advocate for my mother and my family. So yeah, of course, I would love for you to appoint a guardian. Now I'm going to have somebody to fight the nursing home with me. But in my stupidity, I didn't realize that that guardian was actually closely tied to the law firm that the nursing home had hired. And in what I would call a litigious scheme, they were going to sue me civilly for the nursing home bill that I was withholding because I didn't feel that I should be paying for substandard care for my mother. And one thing led to another. And they also called the feds and made a lot of noise and wrote letters to Democratic Congress people and went crazy after me, not only in court, but actually on a political platform as well, which was crazy. And they used my political platform to take a shot at me. Wow. And one thing led to another. And to make a long story short, I ended up pleading guilty to misappropriating $17,000 of Social Security money. And at the time, it seemed like a logical decision. I have an unlawful death suit against the nursing home because they killed my mother. My mother had bed sores all over her body. The guardian didn't do a goddamn thing to help her, in my opinion. It was a situation where the nursing home was neglectful. They're at fault. But meanwhile, you had a court-appointed guardian who didn't notice that my mother had bed sores down to the bone. And I had no way of being able to stop the neglect at that point because I had no legal right to step in and help her. So when I would call the ombudsman and I would call the state agencies and I would say, the guardian's not there, my mother has bruises on her face, something's wrong, I was told, there's nothing you can do. We can't speak to you. We can only speak to the guardian. This is how it works. And I had no idea. My husband's a lawyer. He didn't know. I didn't know. We didn't know that the system was this corrupt. We let this happen. And I blame myself for letting it happen. But I also know that now I have to be the one to stand up and tell other people and warn them, because you don't think that this can happen to you or your family. I've never been accused of any kind of crime ever in my life. I've never had anything more than maybe a speeding ticket, and that I don't even recall. Mm-hmm. So for me to be accused of misappropriating funds, I knew it was a witch hunt, but at the time, my lawyer said, listen, you know, you're going to spend so much money fighting this. It's going to cost you $300,000 or $400,000 at least in legal fees to fight the federal government. They had on a form, they were going to say that I misappropriated. It was obvious that no matter what I did, they were going to try to nail me with something because the prosecutor was obviously in bed with the nursing home. And I've said this on podcasts before. I think that she wanted to suck the nursing home owner's dick. I mean, it just the executive director, like, I think that she was hot for him. Like she lied in court. She's an older woman. Like she just bought into everything he told her. And she basically prosecuted me in large part on what seems to be hearsay, which is insane. But at the time, again, I never was accused of anything. So my lawyer said to me, take the plea for 17 grand. It's a misdemeanor. Why do you care? Just take the plea, move on, deal with the unlawful death suit, fight back, deal with all the other things you have on your plate. What's the difference anyway? It's just a $17,000 misdemeanor. You'll get 6 months of probation. It'll be over with. And the prosecutor actually made a deal that was supposed to be probation. But then because she was so obsessed with the nursing home executive director, and again, maybe wanted to suck his dick, wanted to sleep with him, I don't know. But it seemed to me that something was going on there. It was like some incestuous orgy between the lawyers and her and everybody, that basically at that point, the prosecutor got up there and lied 6 times that I counted during my sentencing hearing. Whoa. And I was sentenced to 30 days in prison. But guess what? When you sign away your rights and you take a plea deal, you sign a waiver that says that you can't appeal it. Like you can't do anything.
Oh my God.
So
like
I got screwed. Yeah, I got totally screwed. So, yeah, I spent 30 days in a maximum security federal prison because the magistrate sentenced me to 30 days, I think, because if he would have sentenced me to 31, I would have gone to some like minimum security Martha Stewart joint. But because my sentence was so short, I ended up in a federal detention center in downtown Miami in O-Town. And my bunkie was there for manslaughter. She was lovely.
Yes.
It was a really interesting experience. I actually really liked her. I got to tell you something. I liked her. We got along. Like there was no issues. I didn't get in any fights. She's probably still there. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but she's probably still there. She had a pretty hefty sentence. And then my other good friend who was there actually was sentenced to 15 years on drug charges and gang charges, and she's still there. But everybody said to me, oh, you're going to go in there and people are going to want to beat the shit out of you because you're a Trump supporter and they're going to hate you in there. And honestly, everybody was pretty nice to me and I really didn't have a bad time.
Yeah. So your roommate who was in for manslaughter, who did she kill supposedly? Or like, what was the story there?
It was actually kind of relatable. She, you know, I mean, I got to tell you, it was. I mean, sometimes some shit happens and, you know, you have to stab somebody to death.
I know the feeling. Yeah.
Basically, she, you know, she was from, you know, a tough area in Miami. And, you know, I can't pretend to know what that's like. So I can imagine if I grew up in a very different socioeconomic situation that perhaps, you know, things happen in the neighborhood and this woman went after her mother. So I found that relatable and she stabbed her to death. There was some sort of a fight and somebody drew a knife and, you know, things got a little overboard and next thing you know, one of the people's dead and it happened to be the person that she was knife fighting. So, you know, I don't know if somebody came after my mom, I'd probably want to knife them. And I probably want to knife some people right now that did go after my mother. Would I actually do it? Of course not. But, you know, in your little fantasy land, I can understand why somebody would do that. And, you know, I have a lot of venom in me for these people that came after my mother, but I have to channel that venom and make it a positive and go ahead and, you know, hopefully make change for other people. I can't bring my mom back. All I can do is fight the unlawful death suit, which chances are I will win. And guess what? The lawyers are trying to get their grubby little paws on the proceeds of that lawsuit now too, which I am not surprised because these litigious lawyers down here that are involved in guardianship seem to be money hungry at any cost. And it's an unfortunate product of the system.
Yeah. When you said like, the litigator, the lawyer was like, you think that she wanted to like suck the nursing home director's dick? I was like,
that's actually the prosecutor. That's the federal prosecutor.
Okay.
The federal prosecutor.
Like,
yeah, no,
wow.
I think she
You hear about all the like sex happening in nursing homes. It's like, I just figured it was the people living there, not like the people on the other side.
Listen, I don't know. I got to tell you, I just think the whole situation down here is sincerely corrupted. I mean,
Wow.
you look at Florida as a swamp, and, we are always talking about drain the swamp and drain the swamp in DC. Well, I want to drain the swamp in Florida because from what I see, it's pretty swampy here. And, the lawyers that came after me, they actually were the product of a $16.4 million jury judgment for doing a family wrong in guardianship. Similar situation to my mother's, where they basically fleeced this guy's estate for millions of dollars, because this is what they do. And
Wow.
the $16.4 million judgment, you would think that they wouldn't still be practicing. You would think that the Florida bar or someone would do something or take some action, but apparently it's just par for the course, and they're still out there practicing and still going after families and guardianship. And when they have siblings, they can turn the siblings against each other and create a guardianship that way and fleece the estate. But when you have an only child, it seems that they now have a little template for prosecution. And I'm not the only one that has been prosecuted in a situation like this. This is actually happening, all over. But because of my political opinions and being a public figure and being a former Mrs. Florida, it may be very easy for them to string me up and try to cancel culture me publicly. But, they got the wrong girl, because you don't fuck with me that way. I come back fighting harder.
Who are you most angry with?
I would say I'm most angry with the nursing home, because I think the quality of care that my mother received was just beyond egregious. And I think the nursing home director, honestly, should not still have his position and should be fired. I can't believe that the nursing home would keep him on after knowing the degree of neglect that my mother suffered, and knowing too that, he was the catalyst to bringing in this guardian who obviously was, in bed with him and in bed with the lawyers and in bed with the prosecutor. I mean, like I said, it seemed like it was just like an incestuous orgy of horrible people. And they all played together to create an environment for me, which landed me in prison. So, is it a conspiracy? Yeah, I think I would call it that. I think I'd call it a conspiracy. And I'm going to keep fighting, and they're not going to shut me up. They can lock me up, but they won't shut me up. And I'm going to keep going. And, they can still try to take shots at me. I'm sure they're not happy that I come on podcasts like this one and I run my mouth about it. But guess what? That's my First Amendment right. And that's why I love the Constitution.
Yeah, good. And you shouldn't stop.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. It's so crazy, because if you think about it, like, where are there a lot of wealthy, people with money who are maybe more vulnerable and they're getting older? That's Florida. So it just seems like a place where that's really primed for this sort of abuse.
And they do it in Nevada too. I mean, there's a lot of states that have a lot of problems, but predatory guardianship is something that's happening in a lot of states throughout the country. There's a really good documentary on Amazon Prime. It's called The Guardians. It's a little hard to watch, but it's the story of this guy, Rudy, and his wife, and they were basically removed from their home by a guardian that they had never met.
What?
That got a guardianship without them even going into court, and basically fleeced their estate and threw them in an assisted living facility.
How does this happen? Like, someone just deems you unfit to handle your own shit?
Correct. You have these lawyers that prey on guardianship. And I'm not saying all lawyers are bad, but in Florida we have, I don't know, in excess of 90,000 attorneys. So it's a very competitive environment for these people to work in. So, in order to make a living as a lawyer, you got to hustle, I guess. And, it becomes so competitive that some of them aren't good people, and they go into guardianship and maybe not with the best intentions. And maybe some of them go in initially with good intentions and then become, jaded by the system and become horrible people. And I think the same goes for guardians. In the state of Florida, all you have to do to be a guardian is take a 40-hour class. So,
Wow.
You've got people that, are bagging groceries at Publix, and no disrespect to that, but that doesn't qualify you to be a guardian for an elderly person. But guess what? In the state of Florida, if you can pass that 40-hour class, you can become a guardian. So, you have a lot of people that I don't believe are qualified to be there. And then, you get them into the system, and then you have these hungry lawyers that come after them, and they're like the wolves. They're like salivating salivating and waiting. And they come in and they say, hey, come with me, little guardian. We're going to teach you how to make a lot of money. Let us know, like identify some people in the nursing home you're in and we'll get you to be their guardian. And then they take these family to court and they basically kidnap elderly people. It's elder napping is what it is. And my mother was definitely a product of this system. And the system is ridiculously flawed. And the Center for Estate Administration Reform, CER, which I'm really involved with now, they've been fighting for change, but I believe we need federal legislative change at this point because it doesn't seem like the states have a good handle on it. And unfortunately, in states where you have elected judges, you have a lot of people doing each other favors. And again, come back to that whole incestuous orgy environment, you can throw that in there too. And, in the prosecutor's case that was in my situation, the one that I was saying wanted to, suck the dick of the executive director of the nursing home. And I hope she hears me say that because yes, I do think that you wanted to suck his dick. I really do. There was something was going on there. Like you can't possibly not do your job and do your research to find out who I really am. You're taking his word at face value. This man that obviously has an agenda because he just neglected my mother who had 9 bed sores on her body that were down to the bone, but you don't give a shit about that. You don't give a shit about that. You're up there saying things like, I never visited my mother, which was completely untrue, that I didn't pay the nursing home anything, which was completely untrue. Like she just got up there and just said whatever he wanted her to say. So I don't know what the obsession was, but I do know that she sat on a lot of these boards, these legal community boards or organizations. And how funny that those were the same people, the same lawyers, the same judges, they're all cuddled up next to each other, down here on these, the Florida Association of Women Lawyers is one that she's a part of. And there's a number of other organizations and these people know each other and it's doing favors for friends. And that shouldn't be the way that the justice system and legal system works. But unfortunately it is.
Yeah. A lot of snakes in the swamp. Very sketchy.
Sick.
Very
so sketchy,
very icky sounding. And it's just like, oh yeah, there is a lot of money in Florida. And it just sounds like these guardianship positions are like, in your case, kind of put in, well, look at this, you're being, this Karyn Turk's being mouthy and causing problems and being noisy. So let's just like put this guardianship in there just to shut you up, or like to, basically keep you from having influence or splashing around or trying to get anything done.
100%. And that's exactly what they did. But, I feel like I have to find, just like I was talking about finding the silver lining and things, I feel like with this, I have to find the silver lining in this too. And, I think to myself, at least my mother's life has become a legacy in the way that I can now go out and fight for change. And she was a civil rights activist. And, it meant a lot to me to do the March on Washington because my mother marched on Washington with Dr. King. And, we didn't agree politically. She was on the other side of the aisle, but because she felt she needed to be for social issues. But, she would admire the fact that I'm willing to go out there and fight for her now. And I know that she's smiling down on me and that she wants to be part of the change here and that she was somebody who fought for people's rights and always fought for the disadvantaged. And she was disadvantaged in this situation and she was taken advantage of by this system. So I feel like I'm fighting back for her. And I know that's what she would want me to do.
Yeah. And it's really hard. Like you went through the proper channels. You were like, let's get my mom help. And it's really hard. Like my mom died 2 years ago. She had brain cancer. It was like a lot of ups and downs. We're from New York. We started in New York and then she was diagnosed and she was like, and my parents were like not honest with me and my brother and sister about like how bad it was or how much time she had to live. Like they were all very sketchy about that. So there, you have all these ups and downs of thinking, oh, well, your mom is going to be the one to make it, even though the statistics are like really bad. And there's just so much to go through emotionally. And then she and my dad moved down to Florida and I was like, why would they move away from the better hospitals, it seemed. And then I was like, you know what, if they'd rather not spend their last couple of winters like shoveling snow in Long Island, like I get it, they can do whatever they want. Like I'm not in that relationship. I don't know what they have worked out. Like from my point of view, I was like, they didn't have a great marriage growing up and they were very resentful and passive aggressive towards one another. And Like it was really hard for me, especially like towards the end, because my dad, it's like, it was almost like a different side of like what you went through. Like my dad was like German immigrant, very stubborn, didn't until the very, very end hire any kind of aid. Like my mom needed 24-hour care. And once that was made apparent to me, I was like, why is my dad not bringing any aides into the house? He's like, oh, well, we don't want, or she would say she doesn't want strangers in the house. And it's like, no, you don't want strangers in the house. And it really blew me away of like how selfish he was, like, in her death and in like the months leading up to it. And like weird, same thing. He would kind of say to me, well, you didn't visit enough. You should have, quit your job and come down here for weeks to help. But meanwhile, he's like not saying that to my brother or sister. He's just like, I'm the one who's challenging him, but therefore I'm the one who's like gets to be made to feel bad. And it's just really hard. And like the route you went seemed like, almost like what I should have done is to fight and like fight for more care for her. And
you would have gotten to go to jail.
I would have, maybe I'd have cool prison stories like you. And it's like, it's just so hard. Nobody can prepare you for like the loss of a parent. Like I remember one time I said to my dad, I was like, I think mom like needs a shower. Cause like at one point she was like in a wheelchair. And like I said to him, like, I think she might need a shower. She's like, and he was like, oh, you can do it. And I was like, wow. Okay. And then like, I'll just like never forget, like I put a bathing suit on. I'm like in the shower. It's like this real moment of like, oh man, like it's like full circle. Like your parents, like, you grow up, you're little, they take care of you. And it's just this moment of like, oh my God, I'm like washing my mom, like naked in the shower. She's just hanging onto my neck. I was like crying, but it's like, thank God it's a shower. So it's all like mixed together. And I just was like, it's hard enough to go through it on its own, like any kind of like dementia or cancer or anything where you, any kind of, disease or something where you lose your parent in chunks, like you lose them in parts, like she was the bubbliest, chattiest, nicest lady. She'd go chat up like a 25-year-old guy in the pool, she just like she'd be drinking pina coladas, just like flirting with whoever, like so great. And then like just to see like, the tumor was on her like focal motor part of her brain. So it's like when she lost her speech, I was like, oh, that's like such a big part of her personality. And like she was so spunky, and it's just like all that. And then when you have to do these like care things for your parents, you're just like, oh wow. I mean, there's part of you that's like, I would do anything for my mom, but then there's part of you that's like, wow, I really don't feel like I should have to be doing this. Like I'll do it, of course, but I just was like, I don't know. My dad was like, so he wouldn't hire extra people in the house, but then I would hear him being like openly resentful about having to like take her to the bathroom. And I just was like, oh, it was so fucked. It was so fucked.
It's so fucked. And it's a no-win situation. Like it could have been the opposite. And you would have been saying, why isn't he being more hands-on? And there's the aides here and there's just too many aides in and he's not paying attention. Like no matter what you do at that point, you always look back on it and you feel like, did I do the right thing? I mean, I think that that's very normal. And I think you do the best you can in the moment and you can't live with regrets and you can't look back and think, well, what if, woulda, shoulda, coulda, because it's such a difficult situation and everybody deals with it differently. And, my dad was super stubborn. That was why I had to move them to Florida to be closer to me because they were living in Connecticut and my father refused to have anybody in the house. And my mom was, at that point, my mom was kind of fun when she first got dementia, actually. She was kind of fun. Oh she was, she would like get lost, but it was like funny, it wasn't like, and she was very aware that she had dementia. So she would always like kind of go back to that. She'd be like, well, I got lost today, but I have dementia. Like
she had a good attitude about it. Yeah.
She had a really good attitude about it, even until the really steep decline at the end. My mom had a very good attitude about it. And I have all sorts of funny stories about my mom and just the funny things that would happen. Like, so eventually my father got to the point where I had somebody come in to do their laundry. And my father was so angry at me that how dare I hire someone to do the laundry? He's completely capable of doing the laundry, except that it was winter and he couldn't walk down the stairs to the basement where they had the laundry in Connecticut. And he decided that he was going to go to the laundromat in 25-degree weather when there was snow and ice on the ground. Wow. And he dragged my mother along with him with a shopping cart with all the laundry in it and fell and cracked his head open.
Oh, no.
So then he had bleeding on the brain. I mean, it was horrible. He's in Yale New Haven Hospital. And, my father, stubborn, is like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to go to physical therapy. I'm going to be fine. And, finally I was like, Daddy, I got to move you guys to Florida. Like, this is enough's enough already. Like, now you're putting Mommy at risk. You're driving in the car. I come up there, there's dents all over the car. They drove through. It was Easter one time, and my father was blind in his left eye and couldn't see, and he drove through a barricade and ended up in an Easter parade. So that was pretty much like the end of the end.
And they're like, oh, this is a new part of the parade. Are you supposed to be the chick or the egg, or like
a little Ford Taurus with two old people in it, going down, through the green in Milford, Connecticut. And yeah, that was pretty much the end. And my mother told the story, and it was funny because she was talking about my father eluding the police, and she was like, well, he refused to pull over, and the cops were chasing him. She goes, and he wouldn't pull over. And I kept saying to him, Joe, you got to pull the car over. You got to pull the car over. But your father drove all the way to the Home Depot in Orange before he pulled over. And then the cops didn't give him a ticket. And my mother was so mad because she didn't want him driving anymore. And that at some point you get to the point where you have to pull the plug. But, then I blamed myself over that. And I'm like, well, if I would have pulled the plug 6 months before, then he wouldn't have fallen and he wouldn't be in the hospital. And, they're independent people, they get to the point where you become the parent, but how much can you really parent your parents? It's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, it's so hard because even though like we're grown people, like in our, like we're adults, it's like I still, even to this day, I struggle to have my dad like acknowledge me as an adult. Like he was, and the same thing as you. It's like, it's funny because he was like carrying my mom to the bathroom and I wouldn't hire aides. And I'm like, Dad, like you need to get somebody in here. It's like, he's also a person in his 70s. You know what I mean? Like when you have another old person taking care of an old person, it's like a ticking time bomb. And it's like,
it's a time bomb.
And and he's so scrappy. He's really in excellent, amazing shape. Like he was a landscaper growing up, like always in good shape, whatever. So he, just like a couple years before, or maybe it was after she was diagnosed, he was up on the roof, like maybe, I don't know, at least 70 or more, like 70 plus on the roof, like redoing the roof. And then he just like fell off the roof, like broke his leg, like right after my mom was diagnosed. He was like, then he gets better. And then, and then fast forward a couple years, he's like taking my mom to the bathroom. I'm like, you really got to stop. You're going to hurt yourself. And sure enough, like I said that on my last trip to Florida, or one of the last ones. And then as soon as I like fly back, I get a call from my mom's best friend, Andrea, who's down the block. She's like, you have to come back. Your dad pulled out his back. He got really badly hurt. And I was like, fuck, why does nobody listen to me? Like he really injured his back just carrying my mom to the bathroom and stuff. And I just was like, why does nobody listen to me? And it's like, part of you wants to do, and I told you so. The other part of you is like, I just want you guys to like be okay. And it was so hard, as I'm sure you felt. They were in Connecticut, you were in Florida. Like I was here in New York, they're in Florida. It's like, what do I have to like cancel and quit everything to go down there to help? And if I did, how much would my dad have even let me help? Like he's so damn stubborn. And and it's like you said though, because that sort of does give me peace, and it allows me to kind of forgive him a bit. Like hearing you say like, hey, they're just doing the best they can. Everyone's doing the best they can at the time with the information they have and I just, whenever I get mad at my dad, I have to think of him. Okay. He's like a person with limitations. Not like I think of him as like special ed, although sometimes, yes, that helps. I'm just like, he's a limited person, dealing, he just doesn't have a lot of self-awareness. He's, so you just have to like, not really cut them as much slack as you can so you're not like walking around with like this burden of resentment.
Yeah, and nothing's perfect. And I mean, especially in those situations, it's never going to be perfect. It's probably never even going to be good. It's just going to be, you're going to be getting by some of the time. And you do what you have with the information that you have at the time. Like if I could rewind my whole situation, believe me, I would do everything differently. I wouldn't have put my mother in that facility. I wouldn't have allowed the guardian to be appointed. I would have done a million things differently. I wouldn't have used the Social Security money to pay for aides. I would have been smarter about that. But, you're doing the best you can at the time. And I felt that the best thing to do was not to pay the nursing home. I mean, you have a contractor that comes and does work on your house and he leaves a hole in your wall. You're probably not going to pay him. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But yeah, obviously going back, I could have saved myself a lot of grief. But, you can only do what you can do with the information you have. And, do the best you can with your personal limitations. And I certainly have personal limitations myself, but, looking back on it, I say, I got to find the silver lining in this. And the silver lining is, now I know how corrupted the system is. Now I know that I'm standing in the swamp down here in Florida, and I wrote a book called Behind the Headlines, which is the same name as my show. And the book is really what really happened behind the headlines of, Mrs. Florida stole pennies off her mother's eyes and all these other things that they wrote about me. This is the real story. This is what happened to my mom. And the story's a lot about my mom and how I grew up, in Teaneck, New Jersey, and, seeing the guardian angels, conquer Fierce City, in the late 70s and 80s, that was New York, that was kind of similar to how New York's going downhill now. But we came out of that for a while and it was a beautiful place. But the book is really special to me because it tells the whole story of what happened to my mother, but it really talks a lot about my mom and who she was. And I think that's important because not only did they dehumanize me in this whole thing with the headlines, but they dehumanized my mom. Why is nobody talking about how she died of nursing home neglect? Why is nobody talking about, a nursing home director who went out and made statements to the paper about how, I withheld money and what a horrible person I am. But yet, my mother died with 9 bed sores eating down to her bone on her body. And you didn't notice, motherfucker? You didn't fucking notice? You're an asshole. He's a fucking asshole.
Yeah. And it's like, it's their job. It's like their job to be on top of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I can see,
He's as dirty as they come. This guy's as dirty as they come. And he knows I think that of him. And these lawyers know that I think that they're dirty too. And I think the prosecutor's dirty. And I think the guardianship system's dirty. And you know what? I think everybody should be aware when you have an elderly parent, it takes more than just having your estate planning in place. Cause I did that. And I thought I had all my ducks in a row. And I had people come out all the time and say, why didn't you have a power of attorney? Well, guess what? Power of attorney goes out the window when you allow a guardian to be appointed. Wow. So yeah, I did have a power of attorney and my mother did a will and she did estate planning documents when she was coherent, when she was able to designate me as her only child. Her wishes were to have me handle everything. So I was legally within my rights. However, when the guardian came in and stripped me of my rights, everything changed. So, even if you think you have all your ducks in a row, you got to watch out for these predators, these gators in the swamp, because they'll come and chomp you up if you give them the opportunity.
And so what happened is like you took some of her Social Security money, I guess, to pay for her care, or and then they said that was what you misused her funds or whatever. That's like what
because God forbid I should use her funds that were Social Security funds that she worked for and paid into the system for her care. But the fatal mistake that I made is on one of the forms that I filled out. They went through all the forms that I ever filled out. I wrote that I used the $17,000 for food and housing. And the government's argument was, well, you couldn't have used it for food and housing because she was in a skilled care facility. And it wouldn't have mattered if I used the money to go to Publix and buy her the groceries that she wanted. It didn't matter if I was buying her vitamins and Depends and all the other stuff that the nursing home wasn't providing because, again, the nursing home sucked. Wow. But, it didn't matter because that money legally belonged to the nursing home. And at that point, because she was Medicaid pending, the nursing home was entitled to the Social Security funds. So that's how they were going to nail me. And they made it very clear to me, too, how fucked up our system is. The prosecutor basically told me, like, either you take the plea deal or I'm going to crawl up your ass worse. And, I knew it wouldn't be long before they crawled up my husband's ass and, looked through our taxes and everything else. I knew that it was a matter of time. It was a witch hunt. They were going to do whatever they were going to do to fuck me. So I had to take the plea, because all I could think is, how can I make other people vulnerable for my mistake? Okay, you know what? I fucked up the form. I fucked up. Guilty.
Right, because you just want it to end. You're like, you
want it to end.
I think for most, and you're even somebody who you're married to like a lawyer, right? So it's like, you're kind of aware of it. I think most people who are not married to a lawyer or have a lawyer in the family, that all that legal shit is very scary. And it's very easy to take advantage of somebody and be like, I'll just do whatever you say. I just want this to be over with. And I think they know that. And I think they take advantage there because it is.
And my husband's, a well-known, high-profile lawyer. We've worked with a lot of high-profile Republicans on cases. He's handled defamation suits for high-profile Republicans. I do the PR for them. So it was obvious to me, like they were already using the politics against me So I knew that that was going to be next. I knew that if I didn't take the plea, that there was a good possibility that it wasn't going to end. And at that point, I just wanted everything to end. I would have never thought, though, that I would end up with 30 days in a maximum security prison and, 5 months on house arrest, and the funny part was when I came out, everybody was on house arrest with me because we were all quarantined.
We're all been on house arrest for like 7 months. So it's like, yeah, it's doable.
I felt like that was karma. I was like, oh, here you go, karma. These people tried to, really to screw me. And, at the end of the day, it wasn't that bad. I did what I had to do. I served my time. I pled guilty. Would I go back and do it differently? Absolutely. Would I fight them with everything I have? Yeah. But, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to fight the federal government when you know that they're going to do whatever they can to win their case. Because remember, it's the competition. That prosecutor wants to win. So,
she can suck that dick.
She was going to suck that dick. That's what she was going to do.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's, and I really, I don't care because that's how I feel. I just think it's a really dirty situation. And I feel like these people are just in this for all the wrong reasons. And the competitive nature that we have in our court systems is not treating people fairly. And when I went into prison, quite frankly, I met all these people that I was like, you know what, you are maliciously prosecuted too. What a racket.
Wow.
You see, you look at things really differently because you meet these people and they're human beings. They're not scary people. And even the people that were there with really horrific charges, most of them, when you're in there, become somewhat relatable. There were a few that were not relatable. There was one woman that was there for murdering 4 people. I didn't speak to her, and I think she was trying to get an insanity plea, so she walked around acting crazy all day.
Were they like all of her ex-boyfriends? Because that I can understand.
No, and I could understand that too. She would have been relatable. We would have been friends because there's a couple of exes that I would like to murder as well. But yeah. It's insane. And, I've had stalkers. I mean, I have crazy people that have come out of the woodwork that just have such opinions about me and they know nothing about me except what they've read or what they see online, or they don't like my politics. And I just think it's insane that people actually, formulate these opinions so quickly about someone. Like,
it's so weird. I have that too. And I'm like nowhere near as like famous or well known as you are, but it's so strange. Like as I've been getting a bit bigger and more fans and followers and all that, like it's exactly what you're saying. It's so strange. Like these random people who come out of the woodwork and are like, you've changed. And it's like, I haven't talked to you in 5 years. Like I haven't seen you since high school. It's like these basically strangers who are like the authority on who you are. And like,
oh yeah.
And it's like, it's wild. I think it maybe comes from like maybe they have a deep like need to feel like they know something or someone, or they can speak on an issue, or they need the attention like that. I mean, that's what public shaming is all about. Like you're up here, everyone's shitting on you. So they're like, oh, how can I elevate myself? I'll be up here also shitting on this person that we're all shitting on so that I can be relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what these people, these stalkers, these internet trolls, like that's what they do. That's how they get their validity and their power. That's how they become someone. And I have a stalker who actually looks exactly like Carol Baskin. I can't make this shit up. I swear to God. Can't even make this up. And she looked like Carol Baskin before Tiger King was a thing. So she's really like the real Carol Baskin. I mean, she looks exactly like I can't. And
you get voicemails saying like, "Hey, all you cool Karens and kittens."
Exactly. I had to get a temporary restraining order. I mean, it was things got a little out of control, and it's been a very interesting ride. And as things heated up, she was writing blogs about me. She, called my first husband and bought him a plane ticket and flew him to Florida. Like,
what?
I can't even make this
Why?
stuff up. Like, it's so crazy because she's nuts, because she's insane. She's insane. And I hate to even give her any validity by talking about her on this show, because normally I don't even talk about this. I think you're the first show where I've ever talked about this, but that was how hard this particular person was stalking me, that she actually befriended my first husband, who I have no relationship with, that I haven't spoken to in 15 years.
That is a crazy lady move.
And bought him a plane ticket and flew him down. Like, there's some people that really are very twisted, but I think it gives them validity. And I hate to give her any validity by talking about her here, because I'm sure she'll get off on it. Maybe she'll her and the orgy people can all get together and have some fun.
I really think that this type of like troll or stalker, like I always say, like I think that trolls or haters are like just confused fans, because it's like the same obsession is there.
Mm-hmm.
They must like I don't know, either idolize or be jealous of something. It's just, but it's like it's twisted, right? It's like the opposite of hate is apathy. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like if they really, or no, yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
like,
I know what you're saying.
it's like
It's close enough. It's close enough. I get it.
it's like they're pointing so much attention in your direction. It's just they're twisted about it. It's like these people are like usually a little bit mentally ill. I
Yeah,
mean, to
for
get
sure.
into your ex is like, that's pretty wild. But
Yeah, no, it was pretty wild. And he's too stupid to even realize what was going on. So it was even funnier that he had no clue what was happening. And I'm like, yeah, no, you just didn't randomly become friends with this person. You know, like, no,
yeah,
she actually was like seeking you out because you were my first husband. Like, let's
yeah.
say my kids actually had to go to him and be like, listen, you can't talk to mom's stalker anymore. Like, I mean, I can't even believe that this is a conversation, but it was a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, I don't know. A lot of men just think like, I'm so charming. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Real fucking charming.
But we're good. We're good now.
We're good. We're all right.
What does it mean to you now to be a catalyst for change?
You know what? It's a powerful place to be. I feel very empowered right now, and I feel very empowered in this moment because I feel like a lot of the nonsense is behind me now. You know, what else can you do to me at this point? You know, and I feel I'm stronger for this experience. And I feel very fortunate for that because I thought I was like a tough cookie before. Like I thought you could throw anything at me and I could handle it. I couldn't. I can now. And maybe I even have further to go. I don't know. But I feel like this entire situation has given me a lot of strength that I didn't have before, and that I'm thankful for. So I feel like being a catalyst to change is going to take that strength. And I'm thankful to all the haters, and I'm thankful to these litigious motherfuckers, and I'm thankful to the dirty prosecutor and the executive director. I'm not thankful that they killed my mother and that, you know, my mother had to suffer and that I'm here because of that. But I'm very happy that they gave me the strength to realize that I'm as strong as I'm going to get and that that's what I'm going to need to be able to fight back against what happened. So, you know, you got to find the good in it. I have no choice. You know, you either laugh or you cry, and I choose to laugh because otherwise life would be way too hard.
Yeah, it's so true. And like the things that get put in our path, like they're to test us, to challenge us, to make us better. And sometimes it sounds very cliche to say everything happens for a reason, but like I really do. I believe that like, you know, everything I went through and like grieving for my mom has like really made me stand on my own 2 feet. And then like also it's opened up so much space for me to reprioritize like my own goals, because I spent so much of her life like just overly like is she okay, is she okay, her and dad are fighting, like now I gotta make her laugh, I gotta like, I was like overly you know, kind of in that way that like the kids start parenting the parents, like I gotta perk her up if she's down. And then, you know, when someone dies, it's obviously horrible, but it's like it opens up all this space. I'm like, oh wow, now I can like focus on my own life, like this is new.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, my mom, like I said, like dementia is such a horrible thing, but like I look back on it now and I feel like I got 2.5 years with my parents where we were really extremely close when I took care of them, that gave me an opportunity to get to know them better, gave me an opportunity to be able to spend time with my mom that maybe I wouldn't have had otherwise. So, you know, I can look back on that and I can say, you know, that was a blessing. And, you know, all the funny stories. I'll give you one funny story because I think this is a great one. When I first put them in the independent living facility, they had this apartment together. And my mom called me at like a full panic, like at like 7 a.m. in the morning. And she's like, you have to come over here right away. There's been a horrible, horrible accident. There's a flood. I don't know what to do. And I show up at the apartment and there's my mom. She opens up the door. My mom was always missing a sock during the last like 3 years of her life. So she's got her one sock on and she kind of like, you know, waddles over to the door and opens up the door and she's visibly upset. And there's a guy unplunging their toilet. And I'm like, so what happened? And she goes, it was horrible. The toilet overflowed. And now she starts crying and she's crying. And I mean, the carpet's wet. And I'm like, okay, like, why are you crying? And she's like, because I'm just so concerned for the people downstairs. I'm really
Oh.
concerned that they probably all drown.
Oh, that's
And I
cute.
said, it was cute. And she was, and I'm like, Mom, they're fine, I promise. And nothing that I was going to say was going to console her. So I took her, we grabbed her walker, and I said, watch, we're going to go downstairs. We found her other sock. We put her shoes on. We got on the elevator. We went down to the first floor. We got to the first floor. There was no flood. And I found a door, and we knocked on the door, and this lady answers, and she's like, hello. And my mom's like, hi. And she's like, and I said, see, they're all okay. And she's like, who's okay?
Oh my God. They didn't drown. What?
Yeah. So there were things like that it was like, things were so out of perspective for her. But, I had these moments with her that I look back now and I can smile about. So, I can find the good in that, or I could find the tragedy in that. And I choose to find the good in it.
How do you think that going to prison changed you, or what did you learn most?
You know what? I learned that I think I learned to accept people. I think I learned a lot about acceptance. And I think I learned a lot about just humanizing people, because when I went in there, I didn't watch Orange is the New Black going in. Although when I watched it coming out, I realized I was actually in the show.
You were that girl. Yeah. You're basically,
I was totally Piper.
Yeah.
Without the lesbian girlfriend and without the craziness. But yeah, you go in with no expectation. And, I went in and, I made friends, and I found the 4 scariest people that scared the shit out of me. And, was like, I'm going to make friends with them first, because if I make friends with them, then, there's nothing else to be afraid of. And
isn't that that's like a cliched, prison rule? They tell people that you're supposed to beat the crap out of the scariest person you meet in prison, but you're like, I'll make friends with them. That's probably what I would do.
I make friends. That's what I did. And, and I met some really great, interesting people that I would have never met any other way. They're not people that I would typically be friends with. They're not people that I would ever meet in a million years, being out, in my life in Palm Beach County. And I met these people, and they were all human beings, and they all had feelings, and they all had parents, and they all had siblings, and, families. And, most of them had very simple desires. Like one of the women who became my best friend in there, she said to me, I heard what happened with your mom. I need you to make me a promise. I know you took care of your mom. When you leave here, promise me that you'll help me take care of my mom.
Aww.
And, what do you do? She's going to be in there for 15 years. I want to make sure her family's okay for her.
Wow.
What do you do at that point? Somebody leaves you with that, and you realize, she's like, she has nobody else. She's 80 years old. She has cancer, and I'm the only person that can take care of her. And here I am stuck in jail.
Oh, man. Wow.
It sucks, but you realize that, people are people, and, we may have all these different opinions when it comes to politics, and we may have different opinions when it comes to social causes, and we may have different opinions, whether you're liberal or you're conservative, but, at the end of the day, those things make up about 10% of my personality. There's 90% of other things that I can find common ground with someone. So walking in there, it really taught me to be much more accepting and find common ground with people when I meet them. And, I thought I knew how to do that before, but I think I know how to do it even better now.
Yeah, because in there, everybody's equal, in ways that you're not kind of on the outside world. There's no classes or what your job is, or who your family is or whatever. Did they let you have makeup in jail?
They did, which was kind of funny, because I don't know why you would wear makeup, but I actually got so bored one day that I had bought a bunch of makeup, and I had bought colored pencils on the commissary, and I spent 4 hours in my cell because we were locked in. This is the beginning of the coronavirus. And I did full makeup on my face, ridiculous. And it looked so good. And I found out if you wet colored pencils, you can use
way
as eyeshadow. And I was blending them. Oh, I had a whole thing going. I was taking toilet paper, and I was making little makeup brushes. I was with pencils. I was using the pencil eraser. You learn that's a really good prison skill too, is that these women in there are so smart about utilizing things that you wouldn't think about for other things, like hacks, like life hacks, like prison hacks. There were so many things. These women can bake a cake in a microwave. That's a cake that you would get at a professional bakery. I mean, there's just,
Wow.
it's pretty
Resourcefulness.
incredible.
Yeah.
Resourcefulness, like all the way. So yeah, I did do full makeup one day because I was extremely bored with colored pencils and the Wet and Wild items that I had bought off the commissary.
So wow, that's really interesting. So it's Wet and Wild. Wow, that's like a throwback to like being 13, 14 years old. Like that was my first makeup.
Yeah,
Because I was like, okay, mascara is probably very hard to fake. That would be my number one thing if I could pick one makeup.
that's what I got.
Like,
That's exactly what I did. I bought mascara and I bought lipstick, and that was it. I was like, I figure everything else I can get away with, but at least I can put a lip on and a little mascara and I'll feel better about myself.
yeah, a mashed potato highlighter,
Yeah, no joke. No joke. No joke. I would have totally put a potato on my face all day long there. All day long. I didn't have any potatoes though.
I could see you like giving makeovers like in prison. I thought that's where that sentence was going. You're like, and 4 hours later, everybody else had a new face,
No, that I probably should have done that, but it didn't happen. There was, it was a very interesting environment in there. There were some women. What I really wish I would have learned when I was in there, I wish I would have learned how to crochet. There were women that could crochet things that were just off the chain, like stuffed animals and blankets and hats and shoes. And you weren't allowed to keep any of them. You had to ship them out because then they became contraband if they were in your room. But you were able to make something and ship it out, which didn't make any sense to me. But there were a lot of things that didn't make sense.
You know what it is? Because they don't want you to crochet like a body double of yourself and then you escape. Like that's like it's like crocheted Karyn in the corner, and you're like, but what's this? You move it out of the way. There's a hole that you've dug and you've escaped.
There were so many things that were nonsensical. Like, first of all, there were no female guards. It was all male guards, which I was shocked by.
Wow, that's so not like an Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that went on that are very Orange is the New Black. A lot of
lesbian
women
stuff?
that have lesbian stuff, but also women that have relationships with the guards.
Yes, that's the juice I want to know about.
Totally. Oh, I could tell you all about that. I can actually, I know how to craft a turkey sausage dildo if you're interested.
Yes, I am. Yes. Thanksgiving is coming up. It's just around the corner.
Turkey sausage, plastic glove, you just, you make do with what you have. Yeah, there was one of those that was confiscated from one of the girls' rooms. Yeah, there was a lot. And actually my roommate was a lesbian. So one of the things I had been told was that they make strap-ons. So I had nope, actually she made them out of maxi pads and tampons, and they stuff the plastic glove and then they attach it to the sports bra. They turn it into kind of like a jock strap and attach it, and it becomes, there was a lot of things that were enlightening, to say the least. Very crafty.
That's beyond crafty. There's no way the men would come up with that. The men would just be like fucking a grapefruit or something. Like, I don't know, maybe it's easier. If I were in there, I would have a harder time because I need something that vibrates, and like I wouldn't know.
Well, then you could potentially, start a relationship with a guard, and he could sneak something in for you.
That's what I would do, because I would like have to flirt my way out. Like, I feel like when everything is stripped away from me, that's my go-to. It's like, I have to flirt my way out. That's like my life skill. Wow.
Yeah, it's a good life skill.
Were any of the guards hot? Like if you were, what I mean? If I were in prison looking at the guards, I'd be like, if I had to, well, what have been,
The guards didn't do it for me, but I have to tell you that there was a hot Latin doctor.
Ooh.
So I actually was really excited to go downstairs and have them take my blood.
Wow. Yes.
This became an activity for me. Like, this is
like
how
unbutton your uniform and you're like, hello.
I was so happy to just have somebody like be nice to me. And he was so cute and so sweet. And I of course, I don't like needles. So I made a whole big deal. And he was like, it's going to be okay. It was the highlight of my entire 30 days was the half an hour that I spent with the hot Latin doctor at the medical facility. And then they asked me if I wanted a pap smear. And I almost said yes.
I'd be like, sure, go down there, see what you can find. Look around. Yeah, smear whatever you want. That's I love that, Karyn, even in prison, you have excellent choice of men. You're like, I'm going to find the doctor.
I found the doctor. I wanted to go to medical. Like I was trying to find reasons to go to medical to go back. I was like, I can't see. I think I might need glasses, you know, and I might need an x-ray. My finger hurts. Yeah. It was interesting, but yeah, he was the only one that I found, you know, moderately attractive. There were a lot of really nice guards. Like I would take my showers between 2 and 5 o'clock every day because that's when my favorite guard was on, and he was a sweetheart. And like, I knew he wasn't gonna like, you know, look in the shower or be creepy in any way. And some of them were creepy and some of them were mean. And, you know, you're not even allowed to cover up like your window on your cell, like to use the bathroom.
Wow.
They don't like you to do that. So I would wait till he was there because I knew I could like get everything done, you know, in the 2 hours.
How can you time your poops? That is amazing. Yeah.
The struggle was real, but yeah, you learn how to work on a schedule. It was probably another skill it taught me, is working on a schedule. So I'm probably more timely because of it now.
Would any of the guards like creep and like look at girls when they were in the shower?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Oh God.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. No, it wasn't, I mean, there was a lot of it that, you know, could be pretty traumatizing if I chose to look at it that way. But again, I'm going to choose to see the bright side. But
keep it light.
There were a lot of things that I saw and that I know now that I'm like, wow, like, again, our system's fucked up. Our Bureau of Prison system is fucked up. Like, there's a lot of things. There's drugs in there. There's cell phones in there. There's everything you could possibly want to get in trouble with in that facility. And, you know, I stayed away from all that. Thank God. You know, my roommate was adorable. The manslaughter roommate, she was really like, she had two personalities. She had one personality where she was like, I'm a fucking convict. And she would like rip your head off. And then she had her other personality in which she would sing Carrie Underwood songs at the top of her lungs with her headphones in, and eat chips in bed and tell me about her girlfriend and, you know, her brother. And, you know, we would like do like campy things together.
Yeah.
Like,
she sounds like a regular girl. Fun. Yeah. She sounds fun.
She was a regular girl. And that's the thing that I think I learned, that like all of these people were quirky, regular people. And, you know, it was interesting. They kind of racially profile you when they bring you in. They look at you and they're like, okay, white girl, you're going to go room with the other white person. And unfortunately, most of the Caucasian people in there were either meth heads or had some sort of like serious drug problems. And the black girls were all super cool. So like all my friends were black.
Wow, that sounds kind of fun. Yeah.
It was fun. They were relatable. They were cool. They were, you know, a lot of them had really rough lives and, you know, grew up in tough situations. But I would imagine if my life had been different, that I could have easily been in their shoes. And, you know, they were easy to get along with, and they cared about each other and they looked out for one another. And there was almost like a, you know, a sisterhood in there, and nobody cared, you know, who was a lesbian or who was sleeping with who, or, you know, who wasn't, or, you know, what your circumstances were outside of there. And, you know, I was told all sorts of things going in, like, oh, these lesbians, they're going to be hitting on you and they're going to try to like rape you. And there was none of that. There were people who were in relationships, and there were people who were straight, and there were people who were gay, and nobody like, you know, didn't like respect people's boundaries. Nobody was disrespectful. Nobody was nasty to me. Nobody was mean to me. I met some really nice people in there. It's the truth.
Yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you definitely learned a lot. This is really
I did.
Juicy. I think the prison is definitely my favorite part of this interview, because I was just like, you know, you definitely made the best of it, and it's interesting to see like what is similar to Orange is the New Black and what is
it
not
was
similar.
Really similar. And I didn't watch it because I was like, I didn't want to have any preconceived notions, that everybody kept saying, you should watch it before you go in. And the first thing I said, my husband picked me up and he came and got me, and you know, he says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go get a Jersey Mike's sub, like the big one, like the giant one. I want to eat the hell out of it. And then I want to lay in bed and binge watch Orange is the New Black. And he was like, really? And I'm like, 100%. And that's what I did. I went home. I put on sweatpants. I ate a huge sandwich. I felt like a fat pig. And then I laid in bed and watched Orange is the New Black. And I was like, wow, like within 5 minutes of watching it, I was looking up who is Piper, because I knew that she had to have actually been in jail, because it was literally like, there were people on the show that I was like, that reminds me of so-and-so. Wow. Oh, that's that person. it was crazy. Like we had, they had a V on the show. There was a V in prison with me, and they were very similar. Like it was just, there were so many things that were so true about that show, but that was actually a much nicer prison. Like that's a low security facility. I was, 5 stories up in the middle of downtown Miami with no outdoor area and no sunlight. And there were people that are in that facility for 10 years that don't get sunlight.
Oh God, that's awful. You need that vitamin D.
They're aging really well though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're not getting sunburn. What was the food like? Is it like really, really awful?
Horrific. It was horrific. And as a matter of fact, the men were defecating on the plastic trays while we were there because so much of the food was expired, and it was that bad that the men in protest would, were unifying and defecating on the trays in protest. But of course, then the women work in the kitchen and they have to clean the trays. So that was kind of unfair.
That's very unfair.
Yeah. And I was on the kosher meal, so I didn't get the plastic tray meal, which was helpful. But the first 2 days I was there, I didn't eat because the rabbi immediately saw me and profiled me and wasn't sure I was Jewish.
Oh, so God.
He came
what do I
back,
have to do?
He came back after looking me up on the internet, calling the Chabads about my husband, realizing that I was Jewish, came back and basically at that point was like, oh, so now I found out you really are Jewish. I'm still going to have to give you the Jewish test. So then they ask you all sorts of questions. Oh yeah, there's a test.
Like how many candles on a menorah?
How many nights are there in Hanukkah? What month is Hanukkah celebrated in? Like things that, anybody who is Jewish would know, but apparently if you're not Jewish, you wouldn't know. And that's how they determine whether or not you're going to get the kosher meal. And luckily I did get on the kosher meal plan, but even the kosher meals the food was really bad. I looked forward to Shabbat though, because then he would bring us challah. Ooh. So I would get my challah and my grape juice, which was like the treat of the week.
Wow. Because I was wondering is it like the kosher meal's better in prison? Just like when you're flying and you ask for a kosher meal, it's sometimes better than like the regular meal.
It was better than the regular meal because there were shit on the trays, but this was, this was really relative to the situation.
Oh, sure, which means no one's shat on the tray.
No one was shitting on the tray, so that was definitely a positive.
Kosher means different things whether you're in or out of prison. Oh my God. I love it. Karyn, where can people find you, follow you, support you?
Follow me on Instagram at Mrs. Florida 2016. I'm also all over other social media as Karyn, KarynTurk. I have a website, which is www.karynturk.com. My new book is Behind the Headlines. I hope everybody there will buy it. The cover is pretty racy, so even if you think the book sucks, you'll definitely want the cover on your nightstand. It's basically me. And I don't have a lot of clothing on. I'm just covered with a newspaper with my ankle bracelet on.
I love it. I'm going to definitely buy it for sure. Karyn, thank you so much for coming on. This was great.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you for having me.
Okay.